It's the kind of rejection that sends shockwaves through global markets. In a bold and unexpected move, Canada and several key European allies have outright rejected President Trump's latest demands, triggering the collapse of a $43 billion 0 cents Boeing deal and wiping out over $2 trillion 0 cents from global markets in a matter of hours. This wasn't just a trade disagreement, this was a diplomatic slap in the face. Trump thought America's leverage was unshakable, but his allies just reminded him that global power is shifting, fast. And as Wall Street reels and Boeing executives scramble, the world is left wondering, has Trump just triggered the most expensive political miscalculation of his presidency? At the center of this global fallout is what was once hailed as a flagship agreement, a $43 billion 0 cents multi-year Boeing contract involving several NATO-aligned nations, including Canada, Germany, France, and the Netherlands. The deal was intended to modernize air fleets across Europe and North America, a joint strategic effort that would have secured thousands of U.S. manufacturing jobs, strengthened transatlantic defense capabilities, and locked Boeing into a dominant position in global aerospace for the next decade. But behind the curtain, tensions had been brewing. Sources say the deal began to unravel when former President Trump, now a dominant GOP figure again, pushed for aggressive renegotiations. His demands? Increased European defense contributions, punitive tariffs on Canadian imports, and more America First clauses that gave U.S. firms disproportionate control over production timelines and intellectual property. Canada flatly refused. European leaders pushed back. The tone shifted from negotiation to confrontation. And just like that, the deal was dead. Within 48 hours, Boeing's stock plunged, European defense ministries turned toward Airbus, Canada issued a statement declaring the U.S. position unworkable and disrespectful, and Trump? He doubled down, blaming global freeloaders for trying to take advantage of American generosity. What was supposed to be a win-win defense milestone became a spectacular collapse, fueled by overreach, mistrust, and diplomatic miscalculation. The collapse of the Boeing deal wasn't just about numbers, it was about principle, pressure, and politics. When Trump returned to the global stage with aggressive demands, many Western allies felt a chilling sense of déjà vu. From NATO disputes to trade tariffs, Trump's previous administration had already strained alliances. This time, they weren't willing to bend. Canada took the lead. Prime Minister Trudeau publicly rejected Trump's call for a one-sided renegotiation, stating, "We will not sacrifice national sovereignty or economic fairness at the altar of political showmanship." Behind closed doors, EU officials echoed the sentiment. France called the proposal economically coercive. Germany labeled it strategic bullying. One of the biggest sticking points? Trump's demand that 80% of the manufacturing remain within the US, sidelining European production partners and effectively turning the deal into a subsidy for Boeing under the guise of cooperation. That, combined with fresh tariff threats and America First clauses, made the proposal politically toxic across the Atlantic. European leaders also worried about long-term dependence on U.S. tech under unpredictable leadership. They've been actively pushing for defense autonomy for years. This deal, in Trump's format, threatened to undermine that goal. The message from Europe and Canada was loud and clear. Partnership cannot exist without respect. They weren't rejecting America, they were rejecting Trump's tactics. And in doing so, they may have redrawn the boundaries of U.S. influence across NATO and the global defense economy. The moment the deal collapsed, markets reacted with brutal efficiency. Boeing shares tanked by over 17% in a single trading session, their largest single-day drop since 9/11. But it didn't stop there. The aerospace supply chain, from aluminum suppliers in Missouri to avionics firms in Europe, saw billions in value wiped out almost overnight. In total, over $2 trillion 0 cents in global market value evaporated in just 48 hours. Wall Street analysts were stunned. Investors had priced in long-term revenue from the Boeing deal, seeing it as a stabilizing force amid rising global tensions. The sudden rejection by Canada and Europe shattered that confidence. Defense contractors, aerospace manufacturers, and even logistics firms tied to international arms shipments all took massive hits. But the impact wasn't just financial, it was symbolic. This was supposed to be America's flex, a demonstration of its unmatched industrial power and leadership in global defense. Instead, it became a referendum on Trump's return to hardline diplomacy. Investors started asking tough questions. Is the U.S. still a reliable partner? Can its deals be trusted beyond one election cycle? Is America first really just America alone? Meanwhile, European markets turned inward. Airbus stocks surged on speculation that the cancelled contracts would soon be redirected. Canada hinted at exploring homegrown military solutions. The US dollar dipped as currency traders priced in uncertainty. What was meant to be a routine defense agreement has now become a global economic flashpoint, and the aftershocks are far from over. For Boeing, this isn't just a lost contract, it's a credibility crisis. The $43 billion zero-cents defense deal was expected to anchor Boeing's international operations for the next decade. Losing it not only decimates their revenue forecast, but also exposes deep vulnerabilities in their global standing. In the hours following the collapse, Boeing's leadership remained silent, a silence that spoke volumes. Employees braced for impact. Industry insiders now warn of impending layoffs across key production facilities in Washington, Missouri, and South Carolina. Suppliers are already scaling back operations, but the damage goes beyond the balance sheet. Boeing was already struggling to rebuild trust after the 737 MAX scandal. This failed deal now raises questions about its long-term viability as the world's top defense and aerospace contractor, especially as Airbus gains ground. The company's future hinges on one factor: whether global partners still view Boeing as a dependable collaborator or as a pawn in a volatile political game. The collapse of this deal is more than a financial blow, it's a strategic alarm. For decades, U.S. influence over NATO allies and global defense markets was unmatched. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and other defense giants didn't just sell equipment, they represented American power. But with one failed negotiation, that dominance now looks fragile. Canada and Europe's rejection signals a shift. Allies are no longer willing to be pressured into lopsided deals. The fallout has given momentum to Europe's push for military independence, while also encouraging nations like Canada to diversify away from U.S. defense contracts. Airbus, indigenous tech, and even non-Western defense partnerships are now firmly on the table. Meanwhile, adversaries like China and Russia are watching closely. America's internal division and unpredictable diplomacy are weakening its alliances and opening the door for rival influence. Trump's aggressive stance may have backfired, not just economically, but geopolitically. The question now isn't whether the world needs the U.S., it's whether the U.S. can adapt or be left behind. One deal, one rejection. And the ripple effects are being felt across the globe. What was meant to showcase America's strength has exposed deep cracks in its global partnerships and raised questions about who still wants to stand with the U.S. in this new world order. Is this the beginning of a global shift away from American dominance, or just a temporary setback driven by Trump's hardline tactics? The world is watching, and the next move could reshape everything. What do you think? Is this smart leadership or strategic self-destruction? Tell us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because this story is far from over.